All righty, this is Ward Fasold from Inside High School Sports. I'm joined with Houston Chronicle reporter John Poorman. We're having an emergency realignment meeting. No, it's a podcast to discuss what's going on in realignment. It's always an exciting day when every 2 years they mix up the districts and we get to figure out who's going up against who, what kind of playoff spots are available, how things have been moved around. John, we had a pretty it usually happens in 6A here for in the Houston area. 6A is usually where a lot of the movement happens because that's where most of our teams are. So let's kind of just go through some of these real quickly. We'll probably gloss over 13 and 14 because those districts pretty much stay the same. It's all the same teams. Nothing really happened there. But in 15 6A, you were talking about it earlier off camera where you thought the Magnolia teams would go. And sure enough, they did go to 15 6A, making that a 9-team district, giving them two non-district games to before they get into the meat of their schedule. How do you think those Magnolia teams will fare there in with the Klein teams and the Tomball teams?
Yeah, it was interesting entering the day because, those Magnolia schools, Magnolia and Magnolia West, were kind of a little bit of a wild card. People weren't really sure exactly where they were going to end up. Obviously, I'm not sitting down and analyzing the maps like the people at the UIL are. But, you thought maybe they go with Conroe, maybe they, go even further south, maybe get mixed up with the Cy-Fair districts. But ultimately they end up in a good location for them with the Klein schools and the Tomball schools. This is a 9-team district, so it's a big one. And these Magnolia schools will certainly have a challenge ahead of them. Magnolia has been a growing area in the Houston metro for some time now. Just looking at their population growth, their enrollment growth, even dating back to, about 2018, it's seen a steady increase. And so this is the next big chapter for a growing community out there.
Yeah, and when you analyze that district, there is some perennial playoff teams in there, and there's not enough spots for all of them to make it. I mean, Tomball and Memorial, Collins, Kane, and Oak, and then the Magnolia schools. I mean, a lot of good teams are going to be left out there, but that's the way it has to be sometimes, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you look at that district and what it's been the past couple of years, even it's been, kind of a dogfight until the very end, for those playoff spots. And, we've had Klein Kane and Collins and, Tomball
Tomball.
Memorial and Tomball and all of these schools really competing, for the top of that district. So there's some schools with some good pedigree as far as football goes, and then Magnolia West bring that of their own. Obviously, they've been doing it in 5A, but these are two programs that have been historically really successful on the gridiron.
Yeah, and they're ready to go up. And then you look at the Cypress districts. 16 6A was I believe it was a 19 district last year, and they kind of bumped Cy Falls down there to 17 6A because Spring Woods is now down in 5A. But should Cy Falls feel a little neglected there? They got bumped out of their district, and you know how 16 6A always is. We always go down to week 10 there or week 11 to figure out who that not only is who's winning the district, but who's making the playoffs. Now it's a little bit. They only got the 18s. You lose Cy Falls down to 17 6A. How do you feel about that little drop off there? And Waller's in there with 16 6A as well.
Yeah, definitely. I thought the appropriate move with how these districts were aligned. Obviously, I have written about this today, but you know, Cypress Falls is less than 5 miles from Cy-Fair High School. So if there was going to be any school that made that move over to 17-6A, it was going to be Cypress Falls. You know, uh, I think when you're looking at 16-6A, you add in Waller. Waller is right on the edge of the Cy-Fair ISD school zone, right up next to Bridgeland. So that one certainly makes sense. I mean, you have people. I live out here in Cypress, and you have people who live in Bridgeland who are zoned to Waller ISD. So that seemed like a pretty good natural fit there. As far as 17-6A goes, the typical Cy-Fair teams that you have in there, and the Spring Branch teams as well. With that addition of Cypress Falls, I think it's going to make it a little bit more competitive. Obviously, Spring Woods dropped down to 5A, but they, it seemed like they had a little bit hard time competing in this district across a lot of different sports. Cy Falls, I think, will definitely raise the level of competition for this district.
Yeah, and it seemed the last 2 years that those four teams, Cy-Fair, Memorial, Stratford, and Jersey Village, seemed like those were the four teams that were going to the postseason. With Cy Creek's, they lost that quarterback to San Antonio, so that kind of took them out of the mix. Now you have a fifth team in there and maybe Cy Creek kind of steps up as well, makes it a little bit more of a race to get to that postseason there. So that should be interesting as well. We probably skip over the HISD district because nothing happened there. And then there are obviously the Katy district. It's the same nine as before. So those two teams, those two districts aren't going to change that much or at all. But 26A has a change, especially change in name. That used to be the Fort Bend district, but now it's the A-Leaf. And we've got Foster moving up. You got Fulshire moving up. Tell me what you think about 26A.
Yeah, definitely interesting. From what I can gather, this was kind of one of the moves that might have been expected for Lamar Consolidated ISD, fitting in with the A-Leaf schools there. And then you throw in Strake Jesuit into the mix as well. But yeah, Fulshire and Foster, obviously, these were two of the seven Greater Houston teams that were moving up to 6A. So, and with them and George Ranch, they were a threesome. Obviously by rule, all of the schools in the same ISDs that are in the same classification have to go into the same district. So we knew those three were all going to be somewhere together. So it'll be interesting to see how this district shakes out as far as football goes. Fulshire is really growing. They had a 37.1% increase in enrollment from the last realignment, and they're a newer school. They opened in 2016, so some of that was to be expected. But Foster also grew quite a bit as well. And so, seeing the Lamar Consolidated Schools in that area down there on the southwest side of Houston continue to grow. I know they're excited about that. I know that both of those schools are excited to compete in 6A, and particularly with Fulshire, what they've done in football the past two seasons. It seems like they're a program that can definitely compete at the 6A level.
Yeah, it's one of those 7-team districts too. So their biggest problem will be finding non-district games because they got four open to find. And you can't really slip up in a 7-team district. You take one loss you're not supposed to, all of a sudden you're looking at the outside looking in. So you can't make any mistakes in district play. Moving to 21-6A, that's the same as 26A of this year, except without George Ranch. That's the Fort Bend teams. So nothing really changes there, except now it's an 8-team district instead of 9. Interesting one now is the 22-6A, man. I want to hear your opinion on that. When the Pasadena schools kind of move in with the Alvin schools and Manville's moving up, and that's also a 9-team district. Man, tell me how that thing shakes out. And is it danger zone for the Pasadena teams? Are we looking like, boy, that's going to be a tough to get into those postseason spots?
Yeah, it really will be. You look at the old 22-6A with Deer Park and Dobie kind of running the gamut over there over the past several years. That it'll be a bigger challenge for Dobie this time around in this new 22-6A because you look at Shadow Creek and Manville and the pedigree that they have on the football field, and then you're going in now with Pearland and Dawson, and of course they've both had a good track record of success recently as well. And so, yeah, from top to bottom, this is a pretty solid district. It's going to be really competitive, I believe. Manville, obviously, that was a big addition to 6A. They just missed the playoffs last year for the first time since 2009. I would expect for them to get back to competing for the postseason, though, with Kirk Martin back leading the charge and for a second season now. But yeah, I mean, it was always interesting to see where those Alvin ISD schools were going to be matched up with, and it turns out that they're with these Pasadena schools. So it should be a really interesting district to me for sure, because it's one some teams are going to be playing that we haven't seen matchups of for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. And teams are going to have to figure out that Dobie offense for that crazy running style. But maybe that's how Dobie gets in the playoffs that first year by surprising a few teams. You move down to 23-6A, and like we said, the old 22 6A broke up and teams are going all over the place. Channelview, and they may have got the short end of the stick there because now they're in with the Humble teams, the Atascocita, North Shore, CE King, and Summer Creek, and those teams have all proven to be not only playoff teams but teams that can go in deep. So Goose Creek Memorial gets to go up to this 6A district, but boy, did they have pick a heck of a district to get into. Well, they didn't pick it; they got put into it. Tell me how you think. I mean, it seems like it's going to be those four, and then I don't see any of the other four trying to fight to get in there. But maybe they'll try.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about Goose Creek Memorial. They're one of the seven schools also that moved up, to 6A. And you're right. I mean, it's a tough one to be placed in. Basically, this district is basically the same, except a little bit more lenient on the travel because they're getting rid of the Beaumont schools in there. So it'll be a little bit better, for North Shore and the Humble ISD schools and CE King as far as travel goes. But yeah, I mean, you talk about the football district that, I really don't see too much change in the competitive balance here. Obviously, we know what those top four teams have done over the past several years with North Shore, of course, leading the way and Summer Creek now, making it to the state championship game as well. Atascocita, always, a powerhouse, and then CE King doing what it's doing, making strides every year. It's going to be really competitive once again to try to break into that top four.
Yeah, and kind of as a side note, you look at North Shore's non-district. I saw they got South Oak Cliff on their schedule this year, which should be a very interesting game matchup right there. 24 6A pretty much stays the same, but they add Deer Park. Now, how do you think Deer Park's going to do in that district? Do you think they can get into? They can certainly battle for a playoff spot. Do you think they'll get into the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean they certainly have every opportunity to be competitive in that district. To start off with, they're the largest school in that district now, with over 4,000 kids in this realignment. So right off the bat, they have a numbers advantage that a lot of other schools aren't really coming close to. The next closest is Dickinson at 3,859. The rest of them are below 3,000 in enrollment. So right off the bat, Deer Park has a numbers advantage. And Deer Park is a program that has had success. They're no stranger to the playoffs or anything like that. So obviously, I think compared to the District 22 6A that they were previously in, this is a little bit tougher. This is a tougher path, I would say, for sure. But I think they have a chance to compete, and I think the addition of Deer Park makes this district even more interesting.
Absolutely. Hey, moving down to 5A Division One, the biggest thing I noticed there is that the Houston teams got out of Region Two, so there won't be that much travel in the playoffs. They're a Region Three team. We don't have that 8 5A team that has to run up and play a DFW team, or DFW team comes down. And you start off at 9 5A, where you have Angleton, Sterling, and the Beaumont teams are in there. Barbers Hill, Port Arthur Memorial, and the team that I'm most interested in is Galveston Ball, where they've had 2 years of just motoring through their district and not being able to do much in the postseason because they really weren't tested during the season. They're going to get their tests now. They're going to get a Barbers Hill team and an Angleton team that is a very talented squads, and a Port Arthur Memorial. Talk about how you think Galveston Ball and then maybe the rest of that district will do.
Yeah, Galveston Ball has had two back-to-back really good seasons. Dominating those Houston ISD teams there, and in the previous iteration of 9 5A D1. But yeah, you're right. The competition is going to get stiffer by quite a good margin here now in this district. I really like this district. I think it's really interesting. You have Galveston Ball, obviously, in the success they've had the past 2 years. Barbers Hill and Port Arthur Memorial. Port Arthur Memorial has been a district champion in recent years. Barbers Hill is coming off a great season, and then you throw in Angleton there too. I mean, that makes it really interesting as well. Angleton's a really solid program, and so yeah, the road is definitely getting a little bit tougher for the Tours. But I think that they're a program that has kind of been building. They have some athletes down there, led by none other than Jonah Williams, the big 5-star recruit. So I certainly think they can be competitive in this district.
Yeah, it will be fun. And Angleton's got to miss their buddies, Foster and Manville and Fulshire. Their buddies seem to. It feels like they graduated and move on to college, and they're still sticking there for one more year. But that's the way it goes. 10-5A is the new Houston district. Houston ISD with Galena Park. I feel like this is a good chance. People are going to ignore this district because maybe there's not a state contender in there, but it's a team that can get four new teams in the playoffs every year. Like you have a chance to compete, and in a Houston ISD, you can go out to the kids, the athletes out there that maybe didn't pick football because they're like, I don't know, we're not going to do much. Well, now not only do you have a chance to make a playoff spot, you have a chance for a district title because Galveston balls out of it, and might entice kids to play a little bit more football and get out there and be able to play that 11th game or that 12th game if they can pull off an upset in the postseason. But I kind of like that for the Houston ISD teams. Is there any team there that kind of sticks out for you?
Yeah, I think Westbury is definitely an interesting addition. They, of course, are moving down from 6A, so right off the bat, like we talked about with Deer Park in their district, they have a numbers advantage. So and they've been playing 6A ball for the past in recent years here. So they definitely have that experience of playing, against a higher level of competition. So that's definitely an interesting addition. Of course, Houston, Sterling, Waltrip, Madison. These are all teams that have had good seasons here recently. So yeah, I mean it's always interesting to see how this HISD district in particular kind of shakes out. It is one from year to year that feels like, okay, it's here for the taking. All these schools are around a similar size and enrollment, obviously, but it affords a lot of these schools an opportunity to jump up there and see some opportunities to get into the postseason.
Yeah, absolutely. And then 11-5A district or Division One seems kind of like a hodgepodge. The rest of the Houston area teams, we got to get them in a district,
Yeah.
but it makes for a fun looking district. I mean, you got a couple teams that come down, Springwoods and Pasadena. You got Laporte, who's got all kinds of new facilities going up over there, and Crosby still in there. Talk about this district, and maybe this is a fun one for those four playoff spots.
Oh, I'll tell you what, looking at the maps, it's definitely an interesting one. I'm starting to I'm coining the term boomerang district
Yeah.
because when you look at the map, it looks like this.
Oh, does it
It's
really?
just curved around the Houston area almost in a complete circle. Um, having some fun with that one. But in all honesty, it's such a interesting blend of teams here.
Yeah.
Obviously, Crosby and Kingwood Park and Friendswood are programs that have had some success. Laporte is coming off a really strong year. Porter is always competitive. So, while the travel might might be a little bit brutal for these teams because they are spread out. I mean, all the way from the southwest side to the northeast side in Montgomery County. I mean, it's this district is kind of all over the place, but as I mentioned earlier, with the rule that all these schools from the same ISDs and have to be in the same district, Houston ISD kind of
Yeah.
nullified any splitting of things down the middle there. So this is what we're left with, but I think it'll definitely be interesting to see who comes out of this district for sure.
The old hodgepodge district. You go over to Division Two, and the most intriguing thing out of the first 5A Division Two, Houston district, which is 5A Division Two, is the fact that we'll have two new teams in the state final. We won't see PNG and SOC again because if they play each other, it'll have to be in the third, fourth round because they're in the same region now. And P&G's in here with Lake Creek and Montgomery, Dayton, and a new school there, New Caney West Fork is in the mix here as well. Any thoughts on that 8-5A Division Two district? I guess it's Ty Ty Byers' swan song in the Houston area as well over there at Lake Creek.
Yeah, I mean, just right off the bat, you have to think that as far as football is concerned, Port Neches Groves is the favorite automatically here, given what they've done the past 2 years. And of course, they are, the defending state champions now. So, they're going to be the favorite, obviously. Coach Joseph has done a phenomenal job down there. So, they're certainly the class of this district right now. But Lake Creek, and you look at what Lake Creek has done over the past 2 seasons, really impressive. And as you mentioned, Tyvon Byers, the star running back, he missed a little bit of time this year, but still managed to score 30 touchdowns. So he is definitely a threat. And Lake Creek, that program under Pat Kennedy, has evolved into one of the best programs in the Houston area for Class 5A. Splendora is moving up from 4A, so they're going to be in for a challenge. And then, West Fork as well. This is the first time that they're going to be, suiting up for varsity football games. So they're definitely in for a challenge as well. Huntsville, of course, made a great run this past season. So, there's lots of good teams in this district, lots of good programs, and but it all begins with P&G and what they've been doing.
Yeah, that's a very talented district. I guess our last 5A district is 9-5A Division II. That actually, they bring Iowa Colony up from 4A. Texas City had a heck of a year last year. They're in there with Marshall and Randall. Of course, we know how good Randall was last year. They've established themselves as a team to play as well. So talk to me about what you think about this 8-team district as our last Division II district.
Yeah, another really interesting one. Obviously, with Iowa Colony moving up, you can't say enough about the season that they just had in 4A D1. Competition's going to get a little bit tougher here now, but they've certainly got a lot of momentum. And Randall as well, with what they were able to accomplish, in their second year of varsity football, I believe. So, two really good programs right off the bat right there. And then of course anytime you have to deal with a program like Fort Bend Marshall, that's always a challenge. And as you mentioned, Texas City, another program that had a good year. Terry, BF Terry, they were competing in 5A D1 last year. They're moving down, so they're going to be feisty, I think, and maybe give a challenge here. And so, yeah, I mean, this district is definitely an interesting combination of teams, but, it should be competitive, I think, across the board.
Well, it's going to be fun. And obviously we're sitting here talking about football because football kind of rules the roost here. If y'all are waiting for our water polo and tennis podcast, that's for another day. We're not doing that here. We're talking about football. And it's going to be fun. I know we still have to wait, whatever it is, 6 more months before we really start getting going with this stuff. But I always love Realignment Day. It's like opening a brand new present of new districts, and we got some good ones.
Yeah, it's definitely a whirlwind every couple years here, trying to break it all down and make sense of it. But there's always, with the city as big as Houston, there's always a lot of movement, and with the growth that we've been seeing, in the Houston area as well. The landscape is ever changing, so it's always interesting to see where things shake out.
Well, it's going to be fun. Thanks for joining us, John, and we can't wait for the season to start.